Welcome to episode 63 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast from Dick and Blaze. I'm Blaze, your host, and this week it was another short week with only 7 games as the bye rounds are still going on. We had 4 teams take bye. The other 14 teams took the field, and it was a pretty interesting week. There were some games that were definitely obvious one-sided affairs. There were some others that were extremely close, and there were others that were just as you kind of expected. I don't know where I was going with that, but that'll do. So we can jump into it. We also will cover what we missed last week with the Rising Star, the AFL Hall of Fame as well, because we completely forgot it was on, as well as previews for the week ahead. So let's jump into it. How are you doing, Mr. Cyric?
Oh, yeah, still feeling a bit under the weather. Went to the doctors. Got told it wasn't anything too serious, but it's still causing me a bit of pain. So, yeah, didn't get up to much this weekend. Because yeah, Sunday I was in pretty much a lot of pain, but put one on that day, so it sort of cancels out.
That's true. You did get a victory under your belt.
Yeah. So, behind the scenes, got a little water bottle here,
Very
keeping
nice.
me
Very cute.
company. I know. So, yeah, as I said, some weird issue with my stomach. Hopefully it will not be needed to pump mid-episode, but if it does, it probably should get our viewership up.
We could use a little bit of a boost. It's not wrong. Need to be a little bit
Yeah.
controversial.
We'll call it educational.
Yeah, let's go with that. My week, not too bad. Just another usual week for me. I did go into the city on Saturday. I went to the Lego Star Wars exhibition at the museum. It was pretty short. It was shorter than I was expecting. I got through it all in about an hour. But it was all pretty cool. Some really fun, really creative designs of like stuff from the movies. Actually, in fact, I think all of it was from the movies. There was only, I think, one thing maybe that, there were like maybe 2 or 3 things maybe that technically weren't from the movies, and they were like from Star Wars Rebels and the Ahsoka series. For example, Chopper. For those that know Chopper, I do have a Lego set of him actually, right here on my couch. I can share that with the class. There we go. That is Chopper. So there's a life-size version of him at the exhibition, which is pretty cool. Then on Sunday, we had the Mario Kart World tournament that HSP hosted, which was really cool. A mutual friend of ours, Tiffy, took part in that, and she had a great time. So that was really cool to see. And yeah, overall, successful weekend was successful, except that I spent money, and I'm trying not to do that.
I feel I'm a bit in the same boat.
Yeah, it's just how it is right now, right? I'm kind of planning ahead for like birthdays and Christmas whilst I'm thinking about it.
Yeah,
So I'm just trying to get that in now before the big rush and stuff like that.
fair enough.
All right, let's jump into our first thing, which is actually the Rising Star from last week, as it was not revealed as of yet due to the big freeze because of when we were recording. But Dan Curtin from the Adelaide Crows won the round 13 Rising Star.
Yes, good WA boy. Oh, I forgot to, but I will pop up his statistics for that game.
Yes.
Well, I can get that up
I
quickly.
can quickly rattle off what he had, what it's mentioned in the article, which is he had 14 disposals, 6 marks, and 6 tackles for that game against Brisbane. Pretty much a really solid pressure game. 10 kicks as well, 10 kicks, 4 handballs. I think he had like a 80 something percent disposal efficiency.
71.4.
Okay, that's still pretty high.
287 meters gained. Yeah, it's more just it seems like a very all-round sort of performance. Few contested marks too. I think he had a clutch goal as well, didn't he? Clutch behind. I don't know.
I mean, they won by a point. Oh, sorry, 5 points. So it was a valuable
Yeah,
behind.
well, 1/5 of the margin. So,
So yeah, there you
yeah,
go.
I actually thought he had a better week this week. So either way, deserved.
Yeah, I think so.
Um,
I mean, it is possible for him to win it twice in a row. So it's Because as much
Well,
as
it's possible. It can't happen now.
yeah,
It
but
would
it's
have
like
had to be last year, this year.
yeah, true. It is unfortunate though that, and we're gonna get into it later on in the episode. But like Tom McCarthy, his debut doesn't count for Rising Star because he's too old,
Too
which
old.
is yeah, I feel it really weird
Bad.
that there's still. I mean, I understand why because mid-season drafts are more like like the 25,
Yeah.
26 year old prospects. But I feel like they should like if they've still got at least like a potential 7 year career ahead of them. Surely they should count.
Yeah. I'm not. It's weird. You could probably add because, like a lot of other competitions, they either have like a most improved player or like a in basketball six man of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there could be some sort of like in between, like I don't know, a I guess just a bolter player sort of thing.
Yeah, you'd think so.
I don't know
It'd
what you
be
would
it'd
call
be
it,
nice to
but
add just like one other award, just for
yeah,
the newer
even if it
players to the
was just
league
them,
that
yeah,
aren't
even if it
within
was just
age
like the
range.
mid-season, you know, just
Yeah,
I guess there's a few rookie
yeah,
drafters that are old. Yeah,
yeah,
I
that's
don't
true.
know,
Oh well. Anyway,
just floating stuff out.
congratulations to Dan Curtin for winning. Oh, for ac- winning, accruing, earning a Rising Star nomination for round
Mm.
13. I will hopefully round 14s will be announced as we're recording. We'll find out. All right, the AFL Hall of Fame was on Wednesday night last week. So when the last week's episode went live, um, and there were 9 primary people that were focused on for the event. 1 being elevated to legend status, 8 being inducted, and we're going to start with the one elevated to legend status, and that is Ken Farmer.
Yeah,
Definitely not from our time, but
oh, I
apparently
thought
it's
you
out.
had like an intro for that.
Oh no, I didn't really, but like a 1930s
Uh,
prodigy,
yeah,
primarily in the South Australian like central leagues.
mm.
So obviously not around when the AFL became a thing, when everything merged. But yeah, like leading goal kicker, probably one of the best goal kickers in Sandfield history, I believe.
Mm. Played with North Adelaide. It looks like.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's pretty impressive. Like it says here in the article that he has a record or had a record of 1,417 goals, and it's
Solid.
apparently a still standing record for the Sandfield.
6.33 goals per game. Yeah, wow. Best and fairest 1936. North Adelaide team of the century, probably fair enough. Yeah. I mean, tactics were different back then. A lot of it was one on one. So if
Yeah, it's
you
true.
had someone that was leagues above the best, you could feast. Farmer reaping what he sowed.
I
I've
see.
got nothing.
I see you
I'm
trying to
just
make a pun
making
work there. I
making
appreciate
puns.
it.
Yeah. uh.
All right, next on our list is one that has been in the hearts of St Kilda supporters for many a year. Left the country to study under the NFL leagues for a couple of years. Has returned recently, unfortunately in more of a media role instead of anything to actually really do with St Kilda. But next on our list is Nick Rewalt.
Yeah, absolutely one of the most courageous players in terms of forwards. Um, Probably with John Brown as well. Just
Yeah,
in terms of the ability to just always put their body on the line, get behind the ball, no matter what way the ball's coming in. Obviously, his mark of the year, where it was literally just courage. Like it was a pretty simple mark. It was just putting himself in a very awkward position. And yeah, obviously, massive Saints player. Um, Very good. He was, I would say, he's one of the first, but he definitely was more. He played a bit like a more modern forward in terms that he was able to come up the ground a bit.
yeah.
It wasn't just the ability to play deep. And, as I said, that's probably a big reason why he was captain for those, what have been, 9 years or something like that.
Yeah, it was a very significant time. Not to mention, he was also the number 1 draft pick in the 2000
Oh,
draft,
yeah, true.
which which was pretty much unheard of at the time for like a tall forward. Normally, I mean, as it normally is traditionally now, it's majority midfielders. They get the number one draft pick spot.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so as I said, absolutely fantastic player. I mean, probably not too many of us need to be reminded about St Kilda, but he was a bit earlier. You know what I mean? A lot of people still know him for how good he is because he was so good late in his career. But again, he was very good, very, very quick.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Kicked many a goal, took many a mark. I believe he had a couple of Mark of the Year nominations as well as Goal of the Year nominations. Can't remember
yeah,
if he
I
won
think
any.
I think he won Mark of the Year. I don't think he won goal. But yeah, there was that one going back with the fly and the other player running, and he just
That's
he
right.
basically just intercepts it running backwards. And there was no way that anyone would be really attempting to go in that context. And if you're like telling your kids, you'll tell them, yeah, just pull out of that. That one's not worth it. But he did it.
Mm.
And he got goal of the year for it. So,
Not to mention,
nowadays we're like, yeah, CTE, it's not worth it. But, back then,
part of one of the few St Kilda teams that actually played final series and went to a grand final. Went to two
went to a grand
technically.
final too. Yeah, exactly. So, unfortunately, we won't mention that. It's his Hall of Fame thing. So, but you know what I was about to say.
What?
Something about quiet civil servants.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have to touch on that. Here we are. At the bottom are all of his accolades. So 336 games, 718 goals, best and fairest in 02, 04, 6, 7, 9, and 2014. Top three best and fairest in 2008, 13, and 2016 as well. Made All Australian 5 times in 2004, 6, 8, and 9. In 2009, he was named captain. 2014 was named vice captain. Was leading goal kicker either for the year or just for St Kilda in 2008, 2009, 2013, 2014. Then was briefly captain in 2005, and then was permanent captain from 2007 to 2016.
Yeah, I think he might have had a leg injury that one year, so I think that's why
Yeah,
that
I
one
think
was
I think he's done an ACL before, so that might have been it, or like
yeah.
a nasty patella or something like that.
It might have been. I had broken leg in my mind, but I don't think that was Riri. Anyway, so there was a reason. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying this is probably a couple of years overdue. I agree with that. He's a very much a big legend of St Kilda and kind of the AFL as a whole, and the whole everything to do with Maddie's match and stuff like that as well.
Yeah. Oh, I
Getting
think probably what you were mentioning with him being overseas, it was probably trying to line it up with when he
uh
was available.
yeah, that too. That probably was definitely a big part of that because yeah, he went over to the
Yeah.
US for a couple of years.
Yeah, he was trying to be an ambassador for linking up the NFL with Australia. He was all right. Got a job with ESPN. Sometimes weirdly see him when you're watching the gridiron on KO, but yeah, as I said, fair enough. Something
Yeah,
different.
yeah, there you
Gets a
go.
bit of a break.
All right, next on our list is one of the champions of the AFLW, one of the women to kind of lead the AFLW to the forefront, specifically in like part of its creation, and that is Erin Phillips.
Yeah, I think we've talked about Aaron Phillips when she retired. Uh it was last year, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Um
we talked about it
so
during our off season when we covered the AFLW.
but just to recap, obviously a footballer at a very young age, wasn't able to complete it, turned to basketball, won an Olympic medal with the Australian team, and then was finally able to play in the AFLW. Port didn't have a team, so she, I wouldn't say begrudgingly played for Adelaide. I think she was just proud to play for her home state. Um, and obviously won, what was it, 3 or 4 premierships? 3, isn't it?
I think it's 3. Yes.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, as I said, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, played her final seasons for Port. Honestly, in my mind, the best skilled player ever to play. In terms of a career, Daisy Pearce might have had a better peak, but Erin Phillips was just so consistent. And yeah, as I said, absolutely deserving. Got football in her blood. And yeah, as I said, yeah, again, for South Australian football, they'll be very happy to have such a strong footballing name etched into the Hall of Fame.
And this is not even adding to the fact that she's also like a WNBL and NBA champion for Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess, yeah, she won the medals, but she also won a championship in the NBL as well.
Yes.
So I think she won silver at the Olympics.
Yes, a silver medal at the 2018 Beijing Olympics.
And the gold medal was in the World Championships, which is still very impressive.
Yes, and then WNBA Championships in 2012 and 2014.
Yeah. So, yeah, as I said, one of the few to do it. Obviously, as I learnt when I talked to Jessel Test Madgton. Yeah, also Maria Conti, the one that plays for Richmond.
Yeah, that would be Monique Conti.
Also, yeah, Monique Conti, not Maria. She's also done it as well. So
yes.
And of course, Dean Brogan, if we're talking about South Australians that have enjoyed success at basketball and football at the highest level.
Yeah, it's an incredible career. Like sports were always in her blood because of her dad, of course. It's the way she grew up. Obviously, with just the pathways for women into the AFL severely lacking when she was younger in the early 2000s. Just nothing she could really do. So went to a different sport, went to basketball. Height is a big factor to that. I do not have that height. But yeah, when the AFLW was formed, came back over, joined the Crows when they got their license, jumped over to Port Adelaide when they got theirs, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
So combined, so played for the Crows 2017 to 2022, played 46 games, hit 50 goals, was Adelaide's captain from 17 to 20, joined Port Adelaide in 2022 and then end of 2023 as well. 20 games, kicked 3 goals for Port Adelaide, Port's inaugural captain in 22 and 23, of course. Won premierships at 17, 19 and 2022, 2 for the Crows, 1 for Port. AFLW Best and Fairest in 17 and 19. AFLW Grand Final Best on Ground in 17 and 19. All-Australian 17, 19, 21. Players MVP 17 and 19. Coaches Champion Player 2019. Adelaide Best and Fairest 17, 19. Adelaide Leading Goal Kicker 18 and 2021. And AFLW Goal of the Year in 2017.
Just a minor correction. That 2022 one was with Adelaide. That was when there was 2 seasons in a year.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because that
was a weird one.
They coincided with each other, didn't they? Pretty much.
Yeah. So she won a premiership in the same year that she also joined Port Adelaide as captain in their inaugural.
Yeah, because they kind of shuffle it to be on the off periods of the main AFL, so that coincides. You're right.
Yeah.
All right. Next on our list is apparently. I say apparently. This is hard truth. And a WA great, a mere legend of the waffle, and this is George Owens.
Yeah. I've accidentally got rid of the article. Yeah. Yeah, as I said. Yeah.
Still trying to bring it
old,
up?
Played for East Perth. Yeah, I got it up now, so sorry. Yeah. I mean, I don't have much to say about this. I'm learning about it myself.
Yeah, a lot of the older players,
big man.
outside of our time.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sandover medal in 1925.
I'll say especially in it for umpiring as well. That's cool.
Yes.
135 games umpired.
Played 995 games for East Perth. 17 games for WA in state titles. Won premierships in the Waffle in 1919, 20, 21, 22, 23, 26, and 27. Sandover Medal in
Back when
1925.
they
Then,
were a powerhouse.
yeah, not so much nowadays.
Less. It's like they're above Swan Districts in terms of like teams with history, I would say.
Oh yeah, fair enough. And then yeah, umpired 135 games from 1935 to 37, 38, 39, and 41, including a couple of grand finals in there as well.
Yeah.
Next on our list is Hawthorn champion. Played one year for Brisbane for like a coaching kind of it was more like
Sensitive.
a leadership sort of role for their backline.
Yeah.
As Brisbane was still developing, trying to get Harris Andrews, into that sort of role, that sort of stuff. And it is the Channel 7 legend himself, because that's where he is now. It's Luke Hodge.
Yeah, honestly, a very tough nut player. He's one of those players that were tough, but like annoyingly smart too. So he really fit Hawthorn's system. Very deserving 2-time Norm Smith medalist. Yeah, I think he was pick? Was he pick 1? Or was he pick 3? I can't remember. It was high.
Very early pick.
Yeah. So
pretty sure
again,
it was top 5.
One of those players that just lived up to the hype. Obviously,
hang on.
known for
had traded up with Fremantle to grab the number 1. So he was basically a number 1 draft pick.
Yeah. No, that was the Trent Crow trade.
Yes.
Where Fremantle gave away the number 1 draft pick. So yeah. Yeah, as I said, fantastic player. Very grounded the way he plays. Gonna say, like, not my favorite player in the history of the game, nor my favorite commentator, but you cannot deny the impact he had on the ground. Yeah, he was a fantastic player.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was reading through the article. Yeah, absolutely. The fact that he came at a time where Hawthorn were were in the middle, basically in the middle of a rebuild. Like they weren't super contending as as we're hoping to be at the time. This was like early 2000s era. But
historically, Clarkson was considering they were considering booting Clarkson at that time.
Well, when Hodge and Sam Mitchell and all them are kind of joined the club, Clarko wasn't even coach yet, so they'd all gone through a coach and then brought Clarko in, and then clearly still weren't getting results up until 2008 hit when they won their first premiership. However many years.
In 2007 they were alright, but yeah, as I said, that was just like an awkward period in the mid 2000s until they turned into what would later be a dynasty.
Well, there was another couple of years where they were kind of fighting for finals, but weren't exactly getting there. Like they had to contend with the Swans and Collingwood and Geelong. Fremantle had started to catch up finally. Ended up playing them in the 2013 grand final. But that's when the Hawks started their three-peat and absolutely
and it really shifted the narrative. Because back then, like we were saying, the Hawthorn, like for their team list, they should have more than 1 premiership for this era. And they were saying, Alistair Clarkson, like, great coach, but maybe overrated, yada, yada, yada. All that nonsense. And then, as I said, they win 3 on the trot and become insufferable.
Yeah, it's like according to the article, like for quotes from Hodge himself, like the team kind of got a bit of an ego on themselves after the 2008 premiership, and it probably didn't help their chances going forward. So they had to kind of do a whole mental reset kind of thing. But it ended up working out, and they become one of the powerhouses of the early 2010s.
Yeah, exactly. So, still unforgiving him for slamming Chad Wingard's head into the point post. He should have got weeks for that. Barely got any.
He did play a bit dirty. We can all be honest with that.
100% a sniper, but I'm not sure how much of it is malicious. Like, I'm never gonna like put that on a player, but yeah, he was the one that I thought just went a bit over the line at times. So there's no doubting his play.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a quick rundown of his statistics, of course. He played games from 2002 to 2017 with Hawthorn, 305 games, 193 goals. Went up to Brisbane for 2018 2019 as a leadership role in their defense. Played 41 games, kicked one goal. When doing uh, what was the Australia stuff for? I can't remember. Was that like a international?
International rules, yeah.
Oh yeah, it might have been
He
like
was
the
captain
Gaelic football.
international
That's
rules.
right.
Yeah.
So he played 4 games for that. It didn't really last very long. They do it every now and then.
I think he was
Um,
captain in the infamous bloodbath game where they just spent the whole time fighting each other.
that sounds about
Got
right, honestly.
put on the shelf afterwards.
Then obviously won premierships in 2008, 13, 14, and 15. Was, of course, captain in the three-peat. Hawthorn Best and Fairest 2005, 2010. All-Australian 2005, 8, and 2010. Norm Smith Medal in the 2008 Premiership and the 2014 Premiership. And was, of course, captain for Hawthorn from 2011 to 2016. Next on our list is another South Australian legend. Um, long time ago. So another player outside of our sort of hemisphere of knowledge. But this is Peter Darley.
Good day for South Australia.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, the Sandfills should get recognised a little bit more. Like, it's not a
Yeah.
bad thing.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of rich history there, but yeah. I'm just skimming through the article. Apparently a lot of charisma. He has got a very good looking mug. Especially for an older player. You know what I mean? I feel like modern day players have very pretty faces.
A lot of the modern
You
day
know,
players
and that's
now are just very baby faced still.
yeah, exactly. Whereas, like, you know what I mean, with the old black and whites, you can't really capture that side of it. But man, that's a face and a jaw. But also he was a pretty good player, apparently.
And according to the article, he was very close to apparently go to join Richmond in the VFL. Apparently, Jack Dyer, Ian Wilson, and Graham Richmond all went over there to try and coax him over, but he was like, "No, I want to stay in the Sandville. I want to play for my state, and whichever clubs I join." I think he only played for South Adelaide. Yeah, stats here say played only for South Adelaide as well as state games. But I mean, he has has an incredible record, so can't say too much about it.
Yeah. 206 games, 123 goals, 13 games for the South Australian All Team, Premiership in 64, Best and Fairest in 63, 64, 66, 67, 68, 72, and 73, All Australian Carnival in 1969, leading goal kicker in 1974, and South Adelaide captain 1967 to 9 and 71 as well, and South Adelaide coach as well for a 3-year stint,
coach.
67 to 69. Yes. Yeah, captain coach. Back in the old days. Save a bit of money, 2 for 1 deal.
Yeah, that's how they used to do it. It's that's an incredible record. Like, big ups. Definitely deserving to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
All right, next on our list is another all-timer player. One of more of the a player that comes from a land that is not part of the mainland, which we have plenty of those now in the AFL. A great Tasmanian. This is John Leadham.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, I do know a bit about him. Apparently, one of the best to do it from the state. Bit of a state legend, if you will. Yeah, apparently invited to try and play for the Melbourne Demons in 48. I thought it was a bit later than that, but okay. Yeah. I said I don't know much about from that, but I'm just going down to the stats. Gets a lot of talk. Here we go. So yeah, play for North Launceston, 1946 to 50 as a player,
Mhm.
53 as a captain coach, 124 games over up, 114 games for North Hobart, 54 to 59, so that's afterwards as a captain coach.
Mhm.
13 games in the National Carnival for Tasmania, 47, 53, and 58 as a captain coach. All Australian 1953, first Tasmanian to do it. NTFL Premiership, North Launceston, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50.
Mhm.
TFL Premiership in 57 as a captain coach for North Hobart. State Premiership, North Launceston, 47, 49, 50. Tasmanian Hall of Fame, inaugural legend 2055, and an icon in 2014. Tasmanian Team of the Century, Ruck Rover Vice Captain. North Hobart Hall of Fame, North Hobart Team of the Century for the same things, and North Launceston Best Team 1945 to 1999. I think that should be 49.
Uh,
That would make more sense.
I mean,
Or
I
maybe
don't.
that's the range
That might
of
be the
that team.
range. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's including all players that played in that period of time.
yeah.
That's an impressive resume. 100% deserving of being in
Yep.
the Hall of Fame, even though he never really technically touched the mainland.
Yeah. Better than Jack Rewalt?
uh, Currently, yes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, how could you compare? Like I said, but yeah.
I get the feeling
Yeah.
that a lot of Tasmanian footballers probably would have modeled their kind of. Oh well, he was a ruck
Yeah.
rover, so it wasn't necessarily like a purebred forward, but a lot of like
Yeah.
the sort of smaller Tasmanian players probably would have modeled um a lot of his performance onto their
Yeah, and
performances.
as you've got to remember, it's like, Tasmania in the time, obviously it's a lot harder to go inland.
Mm.
So these are players that kids would just grow up idolizing, go down to the football park um, with your parents, watch players like that. And, for them, they're the best talent they'll ever see. There wouldn't have even been, it would have been hard to even see broadcasts at that time. So, yeah.
Yeah, considering this is what late 40s to early 50s, so they still towards the back end of the
Yeah.
Second World War as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
But yeah, that's incredible resume. All right, time to jump over back to the AFLW to an absolute legend of the AFLW, Melbourne Demons legend, of course, as well, and this is Daisy Pearce.
Yeah, and I said obviously that in my mind, Aaron Phillip is the best to ever play the game. But I do think Daisy Pearce is the best ambassador for AFLW in terms of the playing crop. Because what she's done, championing the game, being what was it, dual captain for the inaugural practice matches. Oh, practice
Yes,
matches. What do you call them? Exhibition matches. Sorry.
yes, that's right.
Um, when it was Melbourne versus Western Bulldogs. I remember seeing the first ones, and yeah, you could tell that she was a cut above the rest. And yeah, just as I said, so well spoken, excellent analysis. And now she might even be adding to the credentials while she's in it because of her coaching resume at West Coast. So
That's right. She's the
she's a player
current
that can,
AFLW head
yeah.
coach.
So not only is she already in it, she has the chance to improve it. I mean, yeah, as I said, she could be the first to dual premiership. Yeah, because she did play in there.
Yes, she did win a
Did she play
premiership
that final? Yeah,
as
I know
at the
they won
Demons.
it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she was playing. I remember she was pregnant in a year that they made deep finals as well, but 90% sure she's won a premiership. So she
Yes,
would be the
there
first
is literally a photo here in the article of her holding the cup in the
which
2022
is looking
premiership.
at it. Okay. Okay.
So there you go.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So yeah. Not much really. I think needs to be said. Also, Demon Blue and Blue. Blue and through. I don't know. Through and through.
Well,
Um
growing up as a Carlton supporter, I would probably change that a little bit, but only played only played for the
hmm,
Demons when joining the AFLW. Played for the Darabin Falcons when going through the VWFL. Um, and for the VFLW as well prior to teams getting their licenses. But yeah, it's a very impressive resume. So 55 games at Melbourne from 2017 to 2022, kicked 25 goals, won the 2022 Premiership, of course, best and fairest in 17, 18, and 2022. All Australian in 2017, was also named captain, 2018 and 2022. Melbourne captain 17, 18, and then 20 and 2022. Didn't play in 2019 because that's when I think she gave birth to her twins.
Mhm.
VWFL premierships for the Darebin Falcons in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, and 15, with from 8 to 2015 named captain. VFLW premierships for the Darebin Falcons in 2016 and 2017. The Helen Lambert Medal, which is the VWFL Best and Fairest, won that in 2009, 10, 11, 13, 14, and 15. The Lisa Hardiman Medal, which is the grand final best on ground for the VWFL in 2005 and 2014. And then the Darebin Falcons Best and Fairest in 2005, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And yeah, not to mention, well, as we've already mentioned, can you continue to improve on this impressive AFL, VFL resume by coaching? Because she's already done a couple of stints as an assistant coach, now as a head coach.
Yeah. Well, she's got the Eagles' best regular season record, so it's already technically something in the
It's already
books.
doing better than the men's, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Then I believe last but not least, another Melbourne Demons champion, one of the current heads of pretty much broadcasting on Fox Footy, and that is Gary Lyon.
Yes, despite how old I am, I don't think I ever actually watched Gary Lyon play. I don't think I was watching too much in the early 2000s, but like we talked about, the archetypical hard on the sleeve, brave. Would he be full forward? He would be more centre half forward.
I think he was more centre half forward.
Yeah. But yeah, as I said, he played tall. He was a very proud player. I think I need to go on the stats. I think he won a premiership. No, he did. Okay. But yeah. Yeah, as I said, is sort of it's not as long a career as I remember him being. But obviously, it was very impressive
Yes,
back in the day.
absolutely. He was also a swingman. Fun fact: originally started in the back line, moved to the forward line, and then was adept to being able to play both ends.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of the reverse from what we normally see now. I think we've got a higher ratio of forwards going back, but yeah, as I said, yeah, he's and also he obviously represented Victoria a lot of times back when they had State of Origin.
Yes,
I think
of
that's sort
course.
of one of the faces you would probably put behind the big V.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just it's a little rough though that didn't get all of the accolades that you might have hoped for when you're playing that dominant of footy. But as long as one club player is always a really good accolade to have on its own.
Mm.
Because it's not very often you really see one club players much anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, and let's be real. Probably the last good Melbourne era he played for a good 20 odd years. So
Yeah, that's exactly right. So Gary Lyon's total accolades, not including obviously his media career, we don't have to go into that. But as a player, played from 86 to 99, 226 games, 426 goals. For the state league, for the state v state games, for Victoria, played 9 games. Melbourne Best and Fairest in 1990 and 94. All Australian in 89, 90, 93, 94, 95. Leading goal kicker in 94 and 95, and was captain from 91 to 97. All right. That wraps up the Hall of Fame breakdowns. Just a quick little half an hour trip to chat about the people inducted into the Hall of Fame and the one legend elevated. Now it's time to get on to the games that have just gone. Starting with our Thursday night clash. People didn't really expect this one to go anywhere except for the way that it did, and that's St Kilda and the Western Bulldogs.
Yeah, and honestly, after all that, the legendary status, not legendary status, but the Hall of Fame induction of Nick Rewalt. This game was anything but a Hall of Fame performance. The crowd was very sparse. The Saints never looked in it, and the Dogs are pretty free to move the ball
Yeah,
from any position, relatively unopposed.
that's about right.
68 inside 50s to 41. Pretty much all that needs to be said for the territory battle. Saints were never really in it. And, as I said, for the Dogs, it was good to see their forward line feasting in terms of the ground and air level, obviously bolstered by Sam Darcy,
Yes.
slotting right back into that forward line. He had an absolutely fantastic game. And I will say, it's a bit different for the Bulldogs because it was actually wide in transition, where they capitalised a bit more. And they were still very good at locking their Saints in their own forward half. Whilst 43% of defensive half movement for the Bulldogs turned into forward 50 entries for them. So the Saints, they were locked in their own half, where the Bulldogs, as I said, just moved it with ease.
Yeah, they really did. The Dogs had full control the entire night. They weren't afraid to take St Kilda out on the wing, even though the Saints have a really solid player out there in Wanganeen Miller. They've also had McRae playing a bit of out as well during this game to average effect. He was able to get a couple of decent contested possessions out of it, but nothing too major really came out of it. He was definitely playing more on the inside with Steele and Sinclair, which, they kind of still got beaten pretty convincingly, or pretty much all across that midfield. Like, the backline, as much as it is, like a 72-point deficit, the backline was fairly solid. It was just really hard for them to kind of capitalize on getting it out of their back half.
Yeah, as I said, it was a lot of forward half turnovers. Bulldogs finishing up with 11,773. I'm not sure if I write that down later. With 75% of their total points coming from the forward half. And as I said, it was still a good defensive half performance because that still leaves 50 points coming from defensive half, which for the Bulldogs is fairly high. But you talk about like Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller, who was sort of, as I said, probably playing around the halfback, pushing up. You know how I feel. Like, sometimes you call them wings, sometimes you call them halfbackers, but they're sort of both.
Yeah, they kind of do a bit of a both role.
But as I said, it was sort of the same problems. Is like, he was having a good game distribution, but a fair few turnovers with not much options down the ground. You sort of had one of his games where, he was still solid, but the best options weren't being taken in terms of back half movement. Obviously not all him, but that was just the story for the Saints. And I will say the flip side for the Bulldogs, and this is why they look a bit well-rounded, and I want to just highlight, these are like anywhere between first to third year players. Saints are playing a lot of them, but in comparison, West Williams, Darcy, Freer, Sanders, and O'Donnell's for the Bulldogs. You compare them to some of the players that the Saints are putting out and some of the performances, and you can sort of see why the Doggies are getting a bit more out of the system. Because, as I said, the Bulldogs already have that nice skeleton to work with, and obviously that feeds off each other. Sometimes it's better to adapt in a better system, while other times, as I said, it's, you can sort of struggle a bit more when you don't have the best options to work with when you're a younger player. And that's just where the Saints are at the moment because, a fair few of their veterans in this game, didn't help. Ron Marshall, we said he has had a pretty poor year. Sam Butler had a good week before, wasn't too influential that now. Jones and Webster all sort of had stinkers. And you know what I mean? It's sort of like you have the Saints where a lot of fringe talent is failing to connect up with some struggling higher level talent.
Yeah.
You know, there's only been like, you know, maybe McRae. Wangani Malira has constant effort, even if he does turn the ball over occasionally. Sinclair, even Steele's been a bit variable, but we'll chuck him in there. And Jack Higgins. Those would be the only 5 players that have been week in, week out enough. And everyone else has just been so variable. So it's hard to find form.
And Wilkie.
Whereas even if the Bulldogs have some weaker areas, which I still put as the back half of the wings,
yeah,
you know, they're at least covering that up with some other things. Where, as I said, the Saints have, you know, maybe one of the best key defenders, one of the best halfbacks, but that doesn't really mean anything because it doesn't really connect to the midfield.
Yeah.
And obviously their forward line is very opportunistic. So they're just coming off very disjointed in comparison.
Yeah, it's exactly right. They don't have... Sorry, I'm going to sneeze.
It's all good. I will say, I did say that their midfield was actually probably sort of West Coast levels when you think about it. And that sort of...
That says a lot.
Hard to deal with. Yeah. Whether they actually are, you know, there's just some stats where, you know, obviously they lose a fair bit. They would arguably have better shape away from the ball, but yeah, their inside midfield is really not something to write home about at the moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like you look at their midfield right now, and all they've really got is the players we've already named: Steele, Sinclair, who does come off of halfback, Wangani Miller, who comes off of halfback, McRae. That's really all that they've really got. Good news is that Alex Toru might actually get a debut this upcoming week, which is very exciting for them. And Mateus Filippo might come back from injury as well. So that'll be good to see. There's definitely a little bit of improvement there. But in the long term, they need to either dig deeper into the draft and try and get whatever they can before Tassie comes in, or see if they can lure anyone from trades. Currently, the deal for Tom de Koning is not looking as hopeful as they would have liked for a decent ruckman, because Rowan Marshall is obviously not performing the way that they would like him to. So it's just, St Kilda need a lot to go right for them.
Yeah, I just think for the rest of the year, I think you just put them as a trap game at best, because I don't think they're going to find consistency. As I said, I think every week they're just going to roll out the pieces. They're very prone to adjustments, so it really just feels like each week they're testing to see what sticks. It's just when it doesn't, it just feels so disjointed.
Yeah, it's the hard part. Like they have decent pieces, but they're missing so much lack of connectivity.
Yeah.
But jumping over to our individuals now, though, and I will start with the doggies, of course. And I'm going to start with Sam Darcy, who, of course, came back from a nasty knee injury that he did about 8 weeks ago. I think it was that long ago. I think it was about 2 months. But yeah, he's immediately back to solid form. It's like he never left. He kicked 3-2 and also got 8 hit-outs, with one of them to advantage. From 19 disposals, 11 contested possessions, 9 marks, with 4 of them contested and 5 of them inside 50. He also got 5 inside 50s as well, 9 score involvements, 4 tackles with 2 of them inside 50, 17 pressure acts and 3 1%ers. Ed Richards once again performed exceptionally through that midfield, kicking 1 goal from 25 touches, 18 of them effective, equating to 72% efficiency, 15 contested possessions, 9 inside 50s, 7 clearances, 11 score involvements, 7 tackles, 21 pressure acts, 3 1%ers, 9 ground ball gets, and 5 21 meters gained. And then Bailey Williams, the Bulldogs Bailey Williams, of course, was solid in defense and transition, finishing with 27 disposals, 21 of them effective, equating to 77.8% efficiency, 5 contested possessions, 6 intercepts, 17 marks, 5 inside 50s, 5 score involvements, 2 1%ers, 2 spoils, and 696 meters gained. Captain Jack Steele was fairly solid with pressure and around the ground. He collected 22 touches, 17 of them effective, equating to 77.3% efficiency. I think it was also his 200th. Or 250th this week, unless that was the week before. I can't remember. But
sounds about right.
He also had 7 contested possessions, 4 inside 50, 6 clearances, 4 score involvements, 11 tackles, 26 pressure acts, and 430 meters gained. And the potential All-Australian Cal Wilkie did the best he could in defense. He finished with 21 disposals, 17 of them effective, equating to 81% efficiency, 7 intercepts, 10 marks, 4 score involvements, 7 1%ers, 7 spoils, and 100% time on ground. Thankfully,
Minor correction, it was Sinclair. That
it
was
was
200
Sinclair, not
game.
Steele. Thank you. I was one of them. I just couldn't remember which.
Yeah, it's all good.
Thankfully, no injuries this week, but there was some MRO reports. Ed Richards was fined $2,000 for tripping Jack Steele. Zach Jones was fined $2,000 for rough conduct against James O'Donnell. And then Hunter Clark and Jack McRae were both fined $3,125 for contact with an umpire. And as I have learned the other day, umpire fines up to this point in the season have equated to over $75,000.
Wow, they're feasting at the end of year trip. I might join them. I might see if I can sign up for an umpire just for the end of season.
Well, honestly, with this money, they should just include it into their salaries and then hire them full time.
I mean, yeah, but that's never going to happen because
No,
that would
of
make
course
a lick
not.
of sense. The
Of
AFL
course
doesn't
not.
like that.
All right, let's jump over to our Friday night game down in Tassie, of all places, one of the coldest parts in the country at the moment, and it's Hawthorn hosting the Crows.
Yeah, well, much to the Bloodhound gang's disappointment, the roof was not, in fact, on fire in this game. In fact, people should have argued that there should have been a roof, full stop. It was low scoring.
I mean, wrong end of Tasmania,
cold.
but still, I agree.
Yeah, and yeah, it was pretty dire. It was Adelaide that would have early felt like they let one get away and won 7 in the back half and let Hawthorn steal a win when they were slightly worse around the ground statistically. Defensively, both teams were, I'll say, still solid. It was a bit easier to defend, but I still think both teams were fairly good proactively. Hawthorn did allow a few easier shots for them. Obviously, Adelaide having a bit more potent forward line. But thankfully, Adelaide were pretty inept at goal shooting, so that didn't really bother them too much. In terms of defenders specifically, I think Butts, Keane, and Worrell all made it hard for Hawthorn. But I did actually think that Chol and Gunston did still find some moments. I did think that their effort was really good in a hard to break into game for Toll's forwards.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as I said, this had a game where there might have been a decent setup for a halfback, but even if transition was harder than usual, like Adelaide just couldn't turn. Their better disposal. What I'm trying to say is like Adelaide had their game set up. They were looking good, getting the intercepts off halfback, but they just were not like other years. Other games this season, converting off it at all. And then Hawthorn got a bit of momentum. They got a bit more reward for pressure.
Mm-hmm.
They clawed back the lead. McDonald being the surprise deadeye that would help them get an ugly but needed win. The final score was 6-11-47 to 5-14-44. And that also reminds me, I completely forgot the other game.
Yes, you did.
I'll completely... St Kilda 8-12-60, worse than Bulldogs 20-12-132. Bulldogs by 72 there.
Yes.
So yeah, it was... Yeah, I mean, it's still hard to feel like Hawthorn actually deserved to win against a probable top 4 Hawthorn. But yeah, it's like their forwards have been missing the best half of the month.
Yeah.
It's really just Chol and Gunston keeping him in it. Ward's probably the only midfielder playing above expected output.
Yeah.
And Meek is good around the ground still, but he has actually stepped back, I think, in terms of pure tap work. And that being said, like, they've only dropped the games against, like, really good teams. Like, their 3 losses in the last 5 were Brisbane, Collingwood, and another good team. I've forgotten. Is it Bulldogs?
It might have been
Geelong.
I think it was either Bulldogs or Geelong. I genuinely can't remember.
I think they beat the Bulldogs. Anyway, so
they did beat the Bulldogs. Like, it was like literally 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so like for a bad burst, like it's not unassailable. They just need to get a bit more click going on.
Yeah, 100%.
And as for Adelaide, they still feel like a very good team, but I think some of the cohesion really just comes through struggling teams. I think that's when their midfield gets a bit more dominant and they become really well above the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And they have had some good games where the midfield stepped up. I do think Jordan Dawson is improving. I think he actually had a fairly mediocre start to the year. And now when you look at his possessions, still a few turnovers, but much more impactful with his ball use.
Absolutely. I think he's probably
And
one of the best improved players in the competition, at least for Adelaide.
I think during the year, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, they're going from the start of the year
yeah.
to now, I would say 100%.
Yeah. It's a bit iffy last year, but he still had a fairly good season. But this is just sort of, I think, getting back to where his peak actually is. So, yeah, as I said, a bit more room for growth for them. Obviously, we'll be disappointed in the loss. We'll be happy that they could still get their game plan going against a good team. But, yeah, they just need to win those when you have that much territory and scoring dominance.
Yeah, it is really interesting to see. Well, granted, I don't think like Tassie was the best location choice for a matchup like this, but granted, start of the year, no one really expected this to be the case.
Yeah.
So like if this was played elsewhere, it definitely could have been a higher scoring affair. Definitely could have been like an entirely different game overall.
Yeah.
But like the fact that we've seen like both of these teams on steady improvements, like dropping games even by the most minuscule of margins, here and there, and then still getting decent improvement out of it the week after. I can only assume that for Adelaide, especially, like this week, despite the conditions down in Tassie as they normally are, they'll get a lot out of this, and they'll probably learn a lot from how Hawthorn structured against them in that second half and what they can do to kind of counteract that. Because granted, yes, conversion definitely did not help them this week. There's no doubt about that. 5-14 is horrendous. But there was clearly a lot more into the Hawks' defense than what the scoreline really says.
Yeah, because as I said, it was just like, it was hard transition, but there was definitely something about Hawthorn making the most of not turning their turnovers into direct scores against. Because it was a huge intercept count, 83 intercepts for Adelaide, Hawthorn 80. So Hawthorn technically had more turnovers. So yeah, as I said, but obviously both teams not getting too much damage off turnover. 3-9 off turnover for Adelaide, 4-9 for Hawthorn.
Yeah, and both teams normally structure their. I'm pretty sure they're both really structured around intercept turnovers and transition.
I think they would be both in the top 5.
Yes, there you go.
I think by memory, the Suns are, but even that might have dropped off with a couple of low scoring. So I'll get that for you quickly.
Yeah, go for it. And whilst you do that, I will go through the individuals for this game. Starting with Jarman Impey, he was immense around the ground this week. He finished with 28 disposals, 22 of them effective, equating to 78.6% efficiency, 5 contested possessions, 10 intercepts, 10 marks, 4 inside 50s, 4 score involvements, 4 tackles, 13 pressure acts, 3 1%ers, 3 spoils, 756 meters gained. As you had mentioned as well, Connor McDonald was solid up forward. He was the kind of surprising forward from this game. He kicked 2 goals from 14 touches, 10 contested possessions, 6 score involvements, 8 tackles with 5 of them inside 50, 18 pressure acts and 8 ground ball gets. And then Dylan Moore was insane with pressure this week. He collected 23 disposals, 18 of them effective, equating to 78.3% efficiency, 11 contested possessions, 5 inside 50s, 3 clearances up behind, 5 score involvements, 13 tackles, 21 pressure acts, 3 1%ers, and 4 28 meters gained. For the Crows, Riley O'Brien matched up really well against Lloyd Meek, as you had mentioned before. Like Lloyd Meek has kind of stepped back a little bit in terms of his performances earlier in the year. So they matched up a lot better this week. I think Riley O'Brien's actually been improving week in, week out. I think he's gotten a little bit better. It really does depend.
Like last 3 matches.
It does also really depend on his opponent, to be fair, because there's only like a handful of really, really good rucks in the league right now, let's be honest.
Yeah, as I said, Riley O'Brien is probably down the lower end. I think it's dropped off a bit, but this is a game where he probably wants it to be his benchmark.
Yeah.
Because it was still being impactful.
Yeah, and he had a really solid overall performance. 43 hit-outs with 13 to advantage, 15 touches, 7 contested possessions, 4 intercepts, 5 inside 50s, 5 clearances, 5 score involvements, 4 tackles, 13 pressure acts, 9 1%, 8 spoils. And then captain Jordan Dawson, as we had mentioned before, was very, very important with pressure. He finished with 24 disposals, 13 contested possessions, 6 intercepts, 7 inside 50s, 4 clearances, a behind, 6 score involvements, 7 tackles, 18 pressure acts, 13 meters gained.
Yeah. And just to back up what you wanted to know before, in terms of turnovers, Adelaide are first. They've taken the mantle of Collingwood. Almost 60 points per game off turnovers. Gold Coast has dropped down a bit. They're 51.4. And Hawthorn are middle of the pack, actually. They're 45.
That's still not
which,
too bad.
to put it, the bottom 4 are around 40. So that's 5 above Drake, which is fine.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
And Adelaide are the best back half team, whereas Hawthorn generally like it from stoppages, particularly from centre bounce, where they're the second highest scorers, scoring 15.2 from centre bounce per game, second only to the Western Bulldogs, which won't be a surprise to anyone.
No, not at all. All right, jumping over to our first Saturday game up at the Gabba. A pretty surprising upset, although if you've been keeping track of how the Lions have played at the Gabba this year, it's not too surprising. It's the Lions and the Giants.
Honestly, it's more surprising how much I think the Giants changed from last week to this week. Giants played Port last week, lost in Canberra, but it was, I know the conditions were different, but the Giants were just so grinding. And I think we forget that a lot of that time they choose to be that way if they don't get the looks they want. And this was a game where they were getting the looks they want. They had a ton of outside movement. The Lions still had like a lot of territory, had a lot more scoring shots, obviously. The final score being 13-18-96 to 17-5, 107. Gone the score a bit early, so I don't forget it. But obviously, with the way that the Giants were able to transition the ball and the accuracy, obviously, they were just killing it from the back of the ground. So I mentioned over the last 2 weeks, the Giants had only scored 4 goals from the back half. That was the Port Adelaide game and the Melbourne game?
North Melbourne game.
Yeah. So they kicked 11-12. 11-2 in this game, which is almost treble that in one. Despite a strong league in the first half by the Lions, Hogan and Cadman were giving him headaches all day. It was a very dominant game with obviously Logan Morris for the Lions converting fairly well. And you know what I mean? It's just like one of those things where, because we've mentioned that Brisbane have been so timidly attacking teams, I think the Giants just took this as their moment, because they're like, well, if you're not aggressively trying to attack us, prevent our movement, we're going to try and walk all over you. And they just showed how good they can be if you don't restrict their out half movement. Because in a game like this, you know, they're like, oh, they got tons from the back half. You would expect, you know, maybe Taylor or Buckley to have gone big, but they didn't even break multiple intercept marks, the both of them. They had 1 each. Buckley only had 4 intercepts overall. Taylor was still solid with 8. But yeah, this was just the great outside work of Ash, Whitfield, Kelly, and Himmelberg. While, you know, the Lions were solid on the inside, the GWS just ran all over them on the outside and really just made them look porous.
Yeah, honestly, like, from what we've seen of Brisbane so far this year, they've been really inconsistent in terms of, not just in terms of like the output we expect from them, but overall just their functionality. It feels like they're misstructured in a couple of areas, and it definitely doesn't help now that Jack Payne has been sidelined for the rest of the year. So they're going to lose.
I wouldn't say even inconsistent. I think only inconsistent to our expectations. Like week in, week out, we've been saying the same thing about Brisbane for weeks now.
Yeah, that's true.
And actually, it's like they look like they're playing fairly lethargically. It's just, as you mentioned, like what we imagine of Brisbane from their heyday, And the fact that they're still winning the teams, as I said, we just expect them to turn on that switch, but it just hasn't quite been there this year.
Yeah, we like in some games it's like they're let loose, especially like a player like Hugh
Mm.
McCluggage, who has been
Yeah,
absolutely dominant so far this season. But in other
yeah.
times, even in a game where it's like over 200 plus points scored across both teams,
Mm.
and it's only an 11-point margin, like it feels like the teams at like either not necessarily the top end, but teams that have competed at the top end and like and have competed well against the top end, like the Giants. Like they might not be like
Mm.
top end right now, but we know that they can get there.
Yeah.
They've they've figured out how to play against the reigning premiers and teams of that caliber, and for the most part, figured out how to shut them down in terms of their transition movement.
Yeah, because as I said, it's very strange because, as I said, like, this isn't like the most stereotypical GWS. Maybe it's like what we thought about there first off, but again, 9 intercept marks to 23 in favor of the Lions. So the Lions were getting the turnover off back half, but you know what I mean? It's as I said, GWS were putting in a lot more effort on the outside movement, and they're like, okay, you can beat the middle for like a part of it. We're still going to like try and restrict the stoppages, and obviously 4-11 for Brisbane in stoppages is what killed them. They get a bit more normal conversion, and they probably win this game.
Yeah,
But a bit of that is still due to GWS's defense. So, yeah, as I said, it's just one of those things where it's still a bit of a gamble. Obviously, Brisbane still have that skill as a team, and they just have enough talent to be able to win most games. But in this scenario, I think it was just, as I said, the Giants taking advantage, rolling the dice against some of Brisbane's more tepid features of 2025. As I
yeah,
said, the movement was ridiculous. Almost both teams moving it around 50% from defensive half to forward 50. So, yeah, as I said, it was pretty much unrestricted movement. It's just GWS was able to convert more of that to score.
yeah. That's right. And the fact that like I don't actually really have him mentioned in my individuals, but Sam Taylor had an incredible game as he normally does. But like he was
Mm.
like top of like some of his peaks this week. It's like it's crazy what
Yeah.
the backline can actually do when they're able to like play their game.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where, as I said, it was, again, Taylor wasn't getting involved in the intercept. He was sort of taking the off player by memory. He was either taking, I think, Hipwood when he was down there, and maybe like the resting Ruckman
Yeah, he was kind of
whenever they
rotating
were
for the
down.
most part, but he
I
was
think
still able to be
Logan
free
Morris,
to impact contests.
yeah. I think Morris was on Buckley. Buckley had a rare off game, but yeah, as I said, it was yeah, it was just one of those things where, again, I mainly watched highlights and a bit of the few quarters. I didn't watch the entire game, but
I was
yeah, so
out
it just seems set up.
during the game, so I only caught the last quarter. But what I saw
Yeah,
of the last quarter was crazy because that's when the Giants managed to pull in the victory.
yeah, exactly. As I said, it just seemed very structured. Like, as I said, and it feels like Brisbane are a lot more fishing, as I said, than really aggressively trying to win games.
Yeah,
Which, maybe it's good that they've got another gear to shift to, but again, I just would have liked to see more in at least one of these weeks. Because it is hard to get everyone in gear. And if they go on the run at the end, we're going to be forgetting about this. You know what I mean? Like,
oh
it
yeah,
takes so little for us to not worry about this anymore, but
like
I'd
we've
say it's a,
still got 10 rounds to
I'd say it's
go.
like amber. Yeah. Amber alert for Brisbane, I think.
Yeah, currently, like if they're not winning these close games that they need to win, it's definitely going to hinder them at the end of the season, in terms of
Yeah.
score and where they want to finish in the ladder.
Well, they did win fifth last year, so.
True, like true. We do have to keep that into count that they can win
Yeah.
it from outside top four.
Yeah, exactly. So. But, as a
Yeah,
credit to GWS at the same time, and especially their top forward line, who did fire today.
absolutely. All right, jumping over to our individuals, and speaking of top forward line, former number one draft pick Aaron Cadman. What a game! Best game of his career so far. I'm
Mm.
so glad to see that
Bust out the clear cell, Blazy, because we have a breakout.
we do. He's finally hit his stride at a perfect time too for the Giants. He kicked 5-1 from 19 disposals, 9 contested possessions, 13 marks with 5 of them contested marks and 6 of them inside 50, 8 score involvements, 9 pressure strikes and 406 meters gained. Tom Green was elite with ball movement through that midfield, finishing with 26 touches, 19 of them effective, equating to 73.1% efficiency, 15 contested possessions, 8 inside 50s, 11 clearances, 2 goal assists, 9 score involvements, 11 pressure strikes, 10 ground ball gets, and 484 meters gained. And Joe Fonte was really solid in defense. Only a small amount of actual touches, being 5 and 3 of them contested. Low amount of pressure strikes, but he was really, really good in the 1%ers and in the spoils. He impacted every contest he was a part of. He played really solid one-on-one. Definitely a player to watch out for in the Giants' backline.
Yeah. No, it's got a few players that are bubbling away. As I said, the Giants trading off a few of their players, broken into a bit of depth. But yeah, there's a fair few that are making good impact in the team.
Yeah.
Royston continues.
Uh,
Sorry, not Royston. Madden. Continues to be okay in the ruck too.
Yes. Jumping over to the Lions, and Darcy Fort had another solid ruck game against newer ruck Nick Madden, of course. I think Madden literally debuted last week, so extremely green. But Darcy Fort had a solid game against him. He finished with 34 hitouts, 12 of them to advantage, and 12 touches, 3 intercepts, 6 marks, 3 inside 50s, 10 score involvements, 10 pressure strikes, 4 1%ers, and 4 spoils. Then Logan Morris, as we had mentioned earlier, had a field day up forward. He kicked 5-1 from 15 disposals, 11 contested possessions, 11 effective possessions, equating to 73.3% efficiency, 9 contested possessions, 7 marks with 5 of them inside 50, and 9 score involvements. Now jumping over to the injuries, unfortunately, as we did mention before, Jack Payne is out for the rest of the year with a patella injury, which is one of the nasty ones for the leg, unfortunately. So
yeah,
hoping for a quick and steady recovery for him because they're going to miss him in that defense. And then for the Giants, even though they literally just got him back, Brent Daniels went off with an abdomen issue. I don't know how serious it is. We'll chase it up when the injury lists released after recording. Hopefully he's all good, but you might have to take a week or 2 off. We shall see. Jumping quickly over to the MRO, of course. Harvey Thomas was fined $2,000 for tripping Zach Bailey, and that is it.
Yeah, I didn't really have anything more to say except for it did remind me the Brent Daniels one of Toby Green last week.
Yes.
Where he sort of just got smashed and couldn't get his hip rotating. So again, Green took the week off, obviously. So it might be the same case for Brent Daniels, which would be unfortunate.
Yeah, it is really unfortunate, but fingers crossed that he's back soon because they've definitely needed him back after so long.
Talking about unfortunate injury circumstances.
Oh, yeah. We're jumping over to the MCG now for an absolute bloodbath between the Bombers and the Cats.
This was the damn wall breaking. Everyone sort of saw this coming. Maybe resistance was more minor than the Dons would have liked, but 27 shots from turnovers gave the Cats 107 points. About a quarter of their back half movement resulted in a score. In fact, their D50 movement was actually more efficient than their back half and was 10% higher than the next best team of the round, which was Fremantle.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, Essendon were just beaten due to lack of height. It was 8-8-56 to 23-13, 151. Just below 100 points.
You don't see that very often, a team kicking 23 goals.
Yeah, exactly. So, Essendon didn't actually win the possession stats. They were forced to play hot potato rather than effectively move the ball. Geelong, as we know, they like to play very direct, very long kicks into good marking contests. But Essendon, by hands, just sort of broke down, unfortunately. And obviously the backline is also where they suffered immensely.
Mm-hmm.
Neil had 5, Cameron, Stengel, Stanley had 3, and Ollie Dempsey had 2. Oh, that's actually marks inside 50. I was almost saying goals. But,
he wishes he had 2 goals.
Yeah. So, and this resulted in 14-6 from set shots by Geelong. Essendon's 5-goal third quarter was really what saved this from being an absolute massacre, and even then, it's sort of
Yeah, it's not good scenes, and it might only get worse because they're also debuting another player in this upcoming week. So they just have to keep using what they've got available. Unfortunately, it's not a great position to be in. It's obviously very very similar to Richmond's position in 2024 with without massive injuries. You know, having 6 ACLs on the bench, it was not great signs for us either. So I completely sympathize with Bomber supporters and how they must be feeling about the team right now. But when you have that huge of an injury list, all you can really just hope for is that you don't get any more and that you just get the team through the rest of the season fairly unscathed.
Yeah, and look, I actually wrote a little point after this. Is like, where do the Bombers look to now? Because obviously you've lost a good chunk of your back half players. So honestly, I reckon just look forward to the ball. Like, I think it's still bad forward to the ball. They're missing a few players, but if you can at least try and improve your scoring and just work on that defense when you get players back, because they are inside 50 differential. They're the worst in the league, which doesn't help. But they do have okay retention rate when they get it in there. They solidly create scores, but really all that they can get is hard general play scores without obviously their 12 targets to kick to. So I think they just got to look at, maybe a team like St Kilda when they didn't have their best options. It's like, okay, when you don't have your forwards, how do we get all these other players into the game? Obviously, it is nice if they had Jack Higgins, but, I think they're going to have to do it by multiple players. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm pretty sure the Bombers do not have Jack Higgins.
No, I know, but what I mean is like, a player
like Jack Higgins. Yeah, okay, yeah,
exactly. So I'm saying like, it's like, how do we get like the combination of Kako, Luau, maybe a Guelphy, if we introduce someone who's a bit more a veteran presence.
Yeah.
How do we combine those two into a very dangerous forward fleet? Gresham being the other one who, as I said, is just, in between sort of thing. So you work on that for the next few weeks. You try and base a game about it. Maybe you some of your defensive transition, because you're not going to win by luck. So, even if it does risk getting higher scores kicked against you, I would like to see them maybe actually turn up the offense.
Yeah, if they're able to at least get ball in hand, it's definitely worth trying to improve their performances inside 50. Because you can't really do much about your defense right now. It's full of holes because of the injuries. Midfield's kind of the same, but you can at least have some sort of impact up forward. And if you can at least improve conversion, improve scoring, even if it doesn't win you games, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, because they do get ball in hand. They're actually number one in disposal, like they were last year, 388 disposals per game. So they get the ball enough. Obviously, they choose to handball a lot more than most teams. I think they're number one in handballs as well.
That doesn't surprise me, actually. It's because they just don't have anyone to kick to. That's the hard part.
Well, yeah, that's part of it. And look, I said I think some of their movement by handball chains is fine. I don't think they need to change the way they approach it. But if, as I said, I would be like, maybe risk having, not your set kicks take it, maybe, I'm not saying that Merit and all that have to have less possession, but you know what I mean? If it's like, try and encourage your players, even if it's, maybe to take the riskier kick. Don't worry too much about scores against from turnover.
Yeah.
As long as it's creating positive play.
Yeah, if you're able to just generate something that shows some sort of positive signs, I would take that more so than just caring more about the win in general, because on paper it's not going to happen unless you're able to get a lot of your injured players back.
Yeah.
So
And just touching on Geelong, I think they're the second best team in the competition at the moment, but there's like literally nothing you can really say from this game.
Yeah,
Like
no.
it was just a dominant
For
performance.
Geelong,
So.
it's just a Geelong game. I'm getting a Charlie horse on my thigh. That is great for me right now. But yeah, no, for Geelong, it's just another Geelong game. Like
Yeah,
we can only really match him up right now to Collingwood, and Collingwood had the bye, so there's not much going on
yeah.
there.
It might even be second on the Jank ladder at the moment. We'll obviously
Um,
get back to the ladder when it's
yeah,
better in a few
after
weeks. But
next week, once all the bye rounds are over, we will catch up on the ladder. But for now, I will
yeah,
jump over to our individuals, starting with Jeremy Cameron. He slotted 6-1, which is normal from him. It's a pretty solid bag. From 14
mm,
disposals, 10 of them effective, equating to 71.4% efficiency. 4 contested possessions, 6 marks, with 3 of them inside 50, and 10 score involvements. Max Holmes has stepped up his work rate massively and is probably Geelong's best player right now overall, I think. Um,
yeah, maybe.
I he does a lot. He does a crazy
Yeah,
amount of work. I rate him higher than Bailey Smith.
yeah. Honestly, from what you're about to say, he has recorded in this game the best player rating performance for an individual game.
Well, there you go. So it definitely at least partially proves my point. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
he kicks a goal from 36 touches, 29 of them effective, equating to 80.6% efficiency, 14 contested possessions, 7 intercepts, 10 inside 50s, 8 clearances, 7 score involvements, 4 tackles, 21 pressure acts, 13 ground ball gains, and 871 meters gained. Then Mark Gutzarves was very solid off of intercept down in their defensive line. He got 5 hitouts as he was rotating ruck, with 1 of them to advantage, and collected 17 disposals, 13 of them effective, equated to 76.5% efficiency, 11 contested possessions, 10 intercepts, 5 score involvements, 8 pressure acts, 6 1%ers, and 3 spoils. Over to the Bombers, and there were some positive signs with Will Setterfield being very solid with pressure. He finished with 31 touches, 24 of them effective, equating to 77.4% efficiency, 11 contested possessions, 7 marks, 5 clearances, 4 score involvements, 10 tackles, and 26 pressure acts. Captain Zach Merritt did the best he could, as he normally does. He's probably still their best performing player overall. He collected 29 disposals, 21 of them effective, equating to 72.4% efficiency, 9 contested possessions, 6 inside 50s, 4 clearances, 4 goal assists, 9 score involvements, 5 tackles, 23 pressure acts, and 422 meters gained. And then for the Bombers, they had 2 debutants in this game as well. So shout out to debutant Lachlan Blackiston, who finished with 4 touches, 9 pressure acts, 71 percenters, and 4 spoils. And Archer May, who finished with 7 disposals, 3 marks, 3 score involvements, 3 tackles, and 8 pressure acts. And as I had just mentioned earlier, they will also have another debutant this week. I will talk about that when we get up to our previews. On the injury front, Sam de Koning went out with a shoulder injury. It's confirmed that he will be out for at least a month as he's going to have surgery on it. And then for
Yeah.
the MRO, Jaden Laverde was fined $1,000 for, you guessed it, contact with an umpire.
Unfortunately, some people say he made more contact with the umpire than he did his direct opponents.
This, I mean, it's a bit of trash talk, but I agree with it.
I mean, he was on camera and he kicked 6 goals. So
True. Yeah, you can't kind of
I do feel
discount that.
bad for him. He's playing above his, probably above his skill in
Yeah,
terms
it's
of
kind of.
what.
You would have think that if Mackay was in, Mackay would have taken Cameron. So it's kind of just
Yeah, exactly.
how it
So.
is.
But yeah, unfortunately, he stays whipping boy for Essendon for another year.
Yeah. All right, jumping over to WA, where we go to North Melbourne's second sold game to Perth, this time at Optus Stadium, and they contend with Fremantle. And this game, I think, was a lot closer than everyone expected.
Yeah, I mean, I could sort of see it coming because Freo cannot stop putting a dampener on their own hype.
Freo
After a
also
very
really
solid
struggled to
year.
win after a bye as well.
That is also true. Yeah, they had pretty much full control, mainly due to outstanding defensive performance, quelling the Roos territory dominance. The Roos got plenty of the ball, got plenty of field position, but they just managed to combat North's inability to translate inside 50s to score. But on the flip side, unfortunately, Freo could only turn inside 50s into behinds. Their forward mechanisms overall were a bit better, although a late injury to Sam Swiskowski did hurt a lot. But nearer to the end, they just turned from composed into converting the occasional scrappy opportunity. What the hell? Sorry, that sentence is weird. I wrote a lot of this when I was sick, I'm going to be honest.
No, you're
But yeah, what I was trying to say is that they went from composed to letting the scrappy, opportunistic ruse players into the game. Players like Larkey and Parker were trying to flip the game on its head in the last half. In terms of the middle of the ground, stoppage dominance by Freo were nullified by Senate clearance by North. And the contest in the end was a close one. But solid defensive performance by North and probably an improved outside distribution was somewhat hurt by just North not quite having enough quality inside 50s. They were forcing their forwards to try and create a bit too much, and it hurt them in terms of efficiency. So although they were accurate, they didn't quite have the scores from inside 50s that they would have liked. The final score being 10-7, 67 to 10-13, 73. And although North sort of, weren't very close and they did perform very well, Freo were mucking around and, it did take them a bit of freak luck to get ahead, but I think that was also sort of where North just, again, drew the line. Because, as I said, Freo mucking around definitely were asking to be rolled over into this game, and they'll still be disappointed that they didn't quite get the win.
Yeah, 100%. This is a game that, just based on their performance, they probably should have won. They should have caused the upset. But yeah, it's just they were asking too much of Lucky, Parker, and Darling. Their inside 50 quality, as you had mentioned, pretty poor for the most part. Their small forwards couldn't generate too much off ground because Freo's defense held up pretty well. And yeah, it's just they needed a little bit of better utilization from their midfield, I feel like, and they would have probably been able to clutch it out.
I don't know if you're just leading in because I wrote about it, but I sort of pointed out this because Robert Hansen Jr., the sub for North Melbourne, good WA boy, came on and had a very good impact. But the scary thing is that in his 30% time on ground, he had more score involvements than all of North Melbourne except for Luke Parker. Obviously not combined, but I think Parker had 6, Hansen Jr. had 5, and the next best was 3. So, you know what I mean? It's like, LDU had a fantastic game. I'm not going to take away from him, but still only had very low score involvements. Sheasel, few possessions generally involved, but not much scoring impact. And obviously Wardlaw, unfortunately, probably at the lower end for some of his performances. Same with Dylan Stevens. His movement on the outside much better. Still not getting involved in the score. So yeah, as I said. And yeah, maybe you could also say the same for Cherry, but I'm probably going to give him a pass because, again, he was fairly solid. But yeah, as I said, he's not as much as a score involved ruckman. So
yeah, he's more of a he's more of a pressure ruck, a little bit of clearance work. Normally does a lot more like the work that his rovers should be doing, really.
Yeah, honestly, it is sort of like a point. So you know what I mean? Like he is the contested player in that midfield. But yeah, as I said, it's just a shame because, as much as I labour that point a bit, everything else for North was good. Honestly, as you mentioned, their ground level game wasn't there, but I thought the efforts of Zerha and Curtis was still there. Like they were putting in a lot of effort. As I said, it's just the entries,
Yeah.
As I said, have
you lost your place?
Larky, as I said, like his 3 goals were a lot better. You know what I mean? Than probably what his forwards are giving him. And, as I said, the rest just came from bits and pieces. So, as I said, it just was, it's one of the rare games where I thought their outside movement was actually a bit better than their inside. Even though I did mention, as I said, Stevens and Fisher didn't really have all that many score involvements.
It's an area that, well, despite, the backline being the big thing that we've been wanting them to improve upon, like they still had a lot of struggles in that midfield, especially outside. But I think this is definitely a much better game. Like, granted, the win against West Coast last week definitely showed positive signs in terms of improvement in that area.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that they were able to contend with Freo, granted, Freo coming off of a bye never really works out all that well for them. But they performed a lot better than what people were expecting, especially in the areas that they've needed to improve.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as I said, it was just a bit. I think that what I'm trying to say with that point, it was disappointing that with all talents in there, like you have a match where I've said, as I said, oh, North's midfield, like, it's still better than the defense. You know what I mean? It's like, it's still where a lot of the stuff's being generated. But like, this is a day where I can like 100% say that North's midfield were the worst performing unit of this game. And that's just a bit of a shame, as I said, when you have such an improvement from the back line, you would hope that it clicks with the midfield. But, as I said, hopefully for North, once their midfield gets back into action, which is still good, maybe they'll actually get a win. But yeah, I think that was just the one thing holding them back in this game. Whereas Freo, as I said, they were good enough. But yeah, as I said, they were just like, they were probably inefficient in different areas in that forward line. They just didn't quite have it together, but still.
Yeah, I think Freo's defense is what held up for them more so than anything.
Yeah, as I said, unfortunately, like everyone played an astounding game except for maybe Sam Draper, who very much lost that contest to Larky early.
Yeah.
But apart from that, they were all very solid. As you mentioned, especially on ground level, I think in terms of talking about all-Australian compensation, I think that's what makes one of the most underrated thing about Jordan Clark is he's probably actually one of the better ground-level defenders in the competition. I know he's known for his distribution, but he is very honest defensively. Same with Heath Chapman. Yeah. I think he's like a better pure defender in terms of the both of them, but having them both play solidly together is very dangerous.
It is. Like, it's one of the aspects of Freo that have massively improved, at least over the past 12 months or so, I would say. Because we know, obviously, their midfield is extremely dangerous when they're on. And the inclusion of Shea Bolton, when Shea Bolton has a good game, like, it makes it even more threatening. But their defensive line has definitely improved massively. And I think that the better synergy between those two has really helped.
Because we saw it was all right parts last year. It was just very spotty. Obviously, with the Smalls, a lot of that was due to injury. And I guess Tolls also too with the missing of Alex Pearce. But it is good to see with Pearce out, their defense still holding strong, unlike last year. I think that is overall a good sign.
Absolutely. Jumping over to our individuals now, though, and I will start with Freo, of course. Starting with Luke Jackson. He had an extremely solid outing in the midfield, in the ruck and around the ground. He got 17 hitouts with 2 of them to advantage and kicked 2 goals from 15 disposals, 11 of them effective, equating to 73.3% efficiency, 9 contested possessions, 4 intercepts, 4 clearances, 6 score involvements, 4 tackles, 17 pressure acts, 4 1%ers, and 4 spoils. Caleb Sarong, as per normal, was elite with pressure. He kicked a goal, 31 touches, 16 contested possessions, 7 intercepts, 6 inside 50s, 8 clearances, 6 score involvements, 10 tackles, 40 pressure acts, 11 ground ball gets, and 585 meters gained. And then Brennan Cox, as we were talking about the defense earlier, was also very solid down there. Finished with 10 disposals, all of them effective, so 100% efficiency, 4 contested possessions, 6 intercepts, 6 marks, 14 1%ers, and 14 spoils. For North Melbourne, Tristan Sherry was once again solid in the ruck. He had to compete with 2 ruckmen and did very well. He finished with 36 hit-outs, with 10 of them to advantage, and 13 touches, 11 of them effective, equating to 84.6% efficiency, 11 contested possessions, 6 clearances, 2 goal assists, 3 score involvements, 7 tackles, and 20 pressure acts. And then veteran Luke Parker had incredible impact the entire game, pretty much. He kicked two very important goals, both of them at long range. I believe one was outside. I think both of them might have been outside 50 as well, actually, which was astounding for him.
Yeah,
I know at
roughly.
least one of them was. Um,
Yeah.
he also had 20 disposals, 14 contested possessions, 7 inside 50s, 7 clearances, 6 score involvements, 13 pressure acts, and 580 meters gained. And as you had also mentioned earlier in your rundown, Sam Switkowski out with a hamstring concern.
Yeah, I think no, okay, sorry. No, mixing it up. They subbed off for Erasmus and then Switkowski got injured a bit after that. So
Yes, that's right. I did
I
see
thought there
that.
might have been something else, but yeah. No, so as I said, it was just one of those things. I will also mention the continued revival of Patrick Voss.
Yes.
He has had a low-key very good season.
Yeah, I didn't put him in my notes, but when I was reading through like the match report breakdown, they specified that
Yeah.
Voss had a really, really solid game up forward, especially when Tracy
Yeah.
isn't really firing, and Jai Amos kind of gets really manhandled in a one-on-one. Like Voss has stood up
Yeah.
massively up there.
Well, I think that's the important thing for Freo because Amos has been completely blanketed week in, week out. Very frustrating year. I do hope he improves. But the fact that they have to still put that much attention on him allows for a player like Patrick Voss to make the most. Because obviously we know Tracy likes to lead out. So in terms of, attention, it doesn't do better for the deep forward. So it really is, you need that heat magnet off Amos, and it is good to see Patrick Voss converting a bit more. Obviously 50-50 for this game. One of these goals was a Joe the Goose goal. He talked it into the crowd. He absolutely loved it. Great celebration, but still a mixed bag with goal kicking, but, he just needs to be around 50-50 and kick about 20 to 30 goals for the season, and that will add nicely to Freo's forward line.
Well, the reality of it is that Tracy and Amos are taking the number 1 and number 2 defenders, and Voss is good enough to be able to handle the number 3 defender. So that balances out it somewhat in terms of Freo's forward performances.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm gonna find it a hard time to say which is the number 1, 2
Oh
defender.
yeah, no, it does. Well, for North in this case, it's very hit or miss as to who's who. But in terms
exactly.
in terms of other teams, it's definitely more notable, and we know that Voss
Although I
has
will say,
done enough to be able to perform against the
Yeah.
number 3 at least.
just last point, Griffin Logue against Amos. Now we're talking about shutdown. Really good against his old side. They've been missing him a lot last year, so I think again, add that to the reason why North's defense has gone a bit better is just the consistency they've gotten from having a Griffin Logue back there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like he's been a really key part of their defense, and injuries has unfortunately wiped him out for a lot of it. So gets a bit of a consistent form back into him, and he could be very solid going forward.
Yeah, and also Hardiman I think's improving week in, week out. So, there's players back there. Finn O'Sullivan probably might get rested one of these days, but still involved and
Yeah, young body probably need the rest.
Yeah, exactly. So but yeah, so as I said, it's good to see that, they've got a few players there that, while they won't be world beaters, are getting that rotation.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, jumping over to our Sunday games now, going over to the Adelaide Oval, where you're very happy about this one because Port Adelaide get a win over the Demons.
Yeah, seemingly revived Port Adelaide. Well, at least after the bye, they've gotten 2 wins against a scrappy but all the while ineffective Melbourne. It made for a good contest for about 3/4 of the match, but inefficiencies in the end in their forward half got the better of Melbourne. As Port played one of the best defensive games they've played for a while. Early on, it was Asava Radikalia that was the man with the plan. He took 7 intercept marks in the first half that all but quelled the Demons' attack. But on the flip side, genius ground level work by Cosy Pickett kept the scorebell ticking. Honestly, it's a bit up in the air whether his knock actually affected his back half. He only had about 3 disposals and no goals afterwards. But he looked like he was going to absolutely tear Port apart in the first quarter. Melbourne were good in stoppages around the ground, but did little stop Port's ball movement, especially from the back half. Again, what was originally Port's absolute bane had very solid had very solid performers in terms of Bergman, Farrell, and Connor Rosie, who is back to playing good football. A late third quarter niggle to Alia led to a bit of a defensive breakdown. Melbourne did hit back in that third quarter, scoring 3-5, but they just needed to be more accurate in that time because they could have had control of the game, but they didn't, and Port were just able to run out the game by a monumental effort by Georgiades, who kicked 7-4, but really could have kicked 10 if he didn't get the yips midway through the game. Dropped a few marks, missed a few easy ones.
Yes.
But steered Port to their impressive win, 14-9-93 to 9-14-68. We got the old mirrored scoreboard.
We do. It's just unfortunate the scores themselves aren't mirrored. It would have been a nice touch.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's possible, but
I think it is for maybe lower scores, not necessarily like higher scores like these.
Yeah, okay. So, so as I said, Port definitely had the advantage of the tolls at either end. Pretty much guaranteed the win. Pretty much guaranteed the win in terms of, expected scoring. But on the flip side, I think Melbourne should have got more out of their territory and ball movement. I think their wingers sort of dropped off a bit this game, especially when you compared it to Port's outside ball movement. But I also think Port Adelaide did a lot of good things. I think this is the second week in a row where Port went a bit more out of their way to nullify some of the pre-match matchups. The first one, I should say, the decision to double ruck against Gawn, Sweet and Vicentini. Gawn was good, but definitely nullified and definitely take advantage of the fact that he had a better matchup against the opponent. So, again, very solid work to nullify that. Also solid targeting the outside players, making the game run on the outside, I should say. Taking players like Oliver, Rivers, and Petrarca out of transition, sort of expose some of the younger players who sort of hit a wall, as I mentioned a bit.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, you had, Melbourne forcing Turner into manning Georgiades early, made absolutely no impact, was put forward in the second quarter onwards, where he looked so much better. And as I said, maybe it was okay testing it out early because May obviously didn't like the Georgiades matchup. But it felt like they just made that wrong move early, and that sort of set the tone for the game. Because, while Melbourne did have a few good performances in terms of the individual matchups, they just looked a fair bit behind Port Adelaide.
Yeah, it's the fact that Melbourne were so easily broken down, like in that second half, kind of just shows that they can still be found out very easily. And like despite the fact that we've seen over the past month, 6 weeks, that their midfield has gotten back to where they should be. The fact that they're still able to get so easily exposed by by nullifying their veteran talent shows that they are not quite where they expect themselves to be in terms of team output, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And even back to the basics, their defense, 22 set shots, resulting in 14-5. Literally no goals from general play for Port Adelaide. So, you know what I mean? Like, this was an area where Port weren't even good at for the last few weeks. I think they apparently had the lowest marks inside 50 over a 3-week period. And they just absolutely dominated Melbourne in that regard. So, yeah, it was very disappointing considering that they had most of their key defensive players there. Obviously, they run Turner back there, still putting Petty in the forward line. But, they still had Lever. They still had May. They just, didn't look all that likely. I guess the only one that we're really missing was McDonald. But, they really could have done a lot better. It was literally only Georgiades, and they couldn't do anything to stop him.
I just find it really funny how I think this is a little bit of karma for Stephen May for going off the back score last week. He got 7 goals kicked on him.
Yeah, as you know, as I said, it was, to be fair, technically only five. Two of those was against what's his name when he went forward, Kerner.
True, yeah.
But sorry, when he was started back. But again, uh yeah, I mean honestly, they just didn't look set up. Half back movement was okay. Um but yeah, anything past that was just pretty bad. So deep in Melbourne's defense, pretty average.
Mhm.
Anything working the ball up was pretty average.
Yeah.
Even like, even though I think Howes and Bowie played okay games, um, maybe Harvey Langford had some moments here and there, but the rest were pretty much underperforming.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's an off game for Melbourne. It's kind of just where they're currently at, I would say. Because we've just
Yeah, their
seen
effort was solid. It's just, yeah, individually, they just didn't have enough
yeah,
against
it's weird.
arguably not a strong team.
Well,
Played
yeah,
well,
as we've
but,
seen over the past prior to the past 2 weeks, definitely not a strong
yeah,
team.
when you lose four losses in a row, as I said, they tell you that, if you win three or four in a row, you're probably a top team when you lose four in a row, unless you're like a Brisbane or, there's one team that bucks it, but I
Yeah.
think Port fairly much, maybe make finals, but they're not as strong.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
I'm hopeful they'll find form, but yeah.
I know. You can hope more than I can, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Jumping over to our individuals, and as you had mentioned, Mitch Georgiadis was absolutely dominant as the spearhead this week. He kicked 7-4 from 18 disposals, 7 contested possessions, 10 marks with 8 of them inside 50, 4 inside 50s, 13 score involvements, 430 meters gained. Isava Radaglia was a wall in defense, finishing with 18 touches, 16 of them effective, equating to 88.9% efficiency, 12 intercepts, 13 marks with 8 of them being intercept marks, 8 1%ers, and 6 spoils. And Jason Horne-Francis was very important in the midfield this week. He kicked 1-3. Probably could have had a little bit better conversion from him, but that's from 29 disposals, 21 of them effective, equating to 72.4% efficiency. 11 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 7 marks, 4 inside 50s, 7 clearances, 8 score involvements, 10 ground ball gets, and 430 meters gained. Shout out to debutant Manny Liddy as well. The one with the leg brace due to a prior severe knee injury, which took him out of the state leagues. I can't remember which state league he's from,
I
but
think, yeah, Victorian.
oh, okay. I didn't realize he was playing VFL or like maybe tier
I
three. I
think
can't
it's
remember.
Victorian. Mm.
But yeah, so that's the player with the leg brace. But they finished with
Yeah,
10 disposals, 3 marks, 4 score involvements, and 11 pressure acts.
very composed
Um,
with the ball. I thought he was terrific.
oh yeah, and definitely a player that already belongs at the AFL level. It's just about
Yeah.
getting that immediate consistency into gelling more with Port Adelaide themselves.
Mm.
And then jumping over to Melbourne, as you had mentioned before, Daniel Turner, Mr. Disco Turner, was very solid, slotting a goal from 15 touches, 13 of them effective, equating to 86.7% efficiency, 5 contested possessions, 7 marks, 5 inside 50s, 3 score involvements, 11 pressure acts, 5 1%ers, 3 spoils, and 494 meters gained. And then Captain Max Gorn contended well against Sweet and Vicentini, getting 36 hitouts, 10 to advantage, and 23 disposals, 17 of them effective, equating to 73.9% efficiency. 20 contested possessions, 7 intercepts, 8 marks, 5 of them being contested marks, 3 inside 50s, 4 clearances, 2 behind, 7 scoring forwards, and 8 ground ball gets. On the injury front, as you had mentioned, Delia Elliott went off with a knee injury. I don't know how severe it is. Did you see it at all?
Hinkley did say that both these injuries, I'll just say Jason Horne-Francis with the shoulder,
Yes.
they were more precautionary. It was like, yeah, we might be able to play them, but would rather just put them on the pine. Both of them were late-ish, so
Yeah. Aaliyah was
Aaliyah
what, end of the
probably when it
second
was
quarter,
closer, but
early third, something like that?
late third actually,
Oh, there you
but
go.
his movement was shot, so um, yeah, it's one of those things where he might not be injured, but in that particular one,
Yeah, you
he
want
was
to
being a bit of a
be
liability.
very careful with it.
Yeah.
And then on the MRO front, Asava Radicalier was fined $1,000 for tripping Harry Petty. And that does it for the Adelaide game. So let's jump over to our last game of the round. Over back in the West, is that this time it's the home team hosting, being the West Coast Eagles hosting Carlton.
Yeah, Carlton dominated team early, proceeded to do much of nothing. How often have we heard this one before, Blazy?
Too
Tale as
often.
old as time. But it was still important for the Eagles not to make this an embarrassment after the disappointment of last week, and considering how much dominance Carlton has had over the Eagles in recent time. Early on, it was just a lack of ground level pressure at contests, which would allow goals as easy as you would like. Lockie Fogarty, one of the better first quarters in the league, but helped by a lack of pressure. He kicked 3 goals. And McWalter gave them a scathing, pathetic analysis. And afterwards, the Eagles would show more grit. Harley Reid was very solid in the middle. Gibney and rookie McCarthy defended their hearts out.
Yes.
And everything except for maybe offensive production was at least respectable. And they ended up winning from 3/4 time onward, the final score being 7-10-52 to 12-14-86 Carlton.
Yeah, it's like Carlton kind of just got a comfortable lead and then kind of just slowed down and only did just the bare minimum to keep the Eagles at bay.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know, because I didn't watch this. I was still feeling unwell and couldn't bring myself to watch it.
I was working on the Murray Cup production, so I didn't get to watch it either.
Yeah. So, look, not much big analysis here. I only literally wrote one dumb point because I was having enough at that point. But, you know, I think again, it's just one of those things for the Eagles where, apart from a couple of big performances, apart from a couple of their veterans having very bad games, one of them due to injury, obviously being Oscar Allen, and then obviously Tim Kelly and Jamie Cripps. Again, just not really fine. Actually, no, sorry. Cripps has been all right this season. It's been Duggan that's been a bit of a letdown.
Yeah, it has
Cripps,
been Duggan.
obviously.
It's been a bit of a letdown.
Yeah. Cripps just not being that involved in this game, which is very unfortunate because, you know, although they didn't have many entries, you know, players like Ryan and Cripps normally being a bit better at converting from them. But they had to rely on one of our favourite scrappers, BJ Williams, for 3 goals. So, yeah, great to see that.
Absolutely.
The only multiple goal scorer for the Eagles this game.
Yeah, it's good to see. It's good to see a little bit more flexibility out of BJ.
Yeah. And obviously you're going to talk about him, but like obviously the big story was the debut of Tom McCarthy getting the record debut disposals for an Eagle.
Yeah, I know.
You'll be talking about him.
I will mention it, but like 31 disposals on debut, breaking the West Coast Eagles record is nuts. Like, I didn't realize that the record was actually really close. So I think the second place is like 28 disposals.
Yeah, it's about that.
So it's
also, here's the player that I'm thinking of that's from Victoria. I'm just looking up that city now.
Yeah, because he played for the Tigers. He was a VFL Tiger.
Yeah. Okay, so Manny Liddy comes from Glenelg.
Oh, there you go.
Manny,
boy.
Yeah. So
very
a clarification there.
Convenient for him there to only just have to go down the road.
Yeah, exactly. That's right, because he was an apprentice, Sparky, I think. So,
oh yeah,
obviously dropped the tools. Probably leaves out in a few gigs, but I think you take that.
Anyway, well, yeah. When you game, a lot of the players were doing it. Like Tom McCarthy, I think was like he was in a trade as well. I can't remember what it was mentioned. Yeah. But yeah, he's like gone from that to playing out in the West. I mean, I don't know if that's any better.
Hopefully it was the plumber patching up the leaks of the Eagles' back half.
Well, he's doing that somewhat successfully right now, so give him some credit. But we all jump over to the individuals, starting with Carlton, and Cooper Lord is my first player to mention. Was very solid with pressure this week. Finished with 14 disposals, 12 of them effective, according to 85.7% efficiency, 4 contested possessions, 3 score involvements, 8 tackles, 13 pressure acts. Jacob Wittering was ball in defence, as he normally tends to be when Carlton play a decent game. He collected 23 touches, 17 effective, equating to 73.9% efficiency, 8 contested possessions, 10 intercepts, 14 marks, 4 score involvements, 10 1%, 9 spoils, 384 metres gained. Tom de Koning had solid control on the ruck, getting 28 hitouts, 7 of them to advantage, and kicking 1-1 from 21 disposals, 14 contested possessions, 6 intercepts, 6 inside 50s, 5 clearances, 7 pressure acts, 6 1% and 6 spoils. Over to the Eagles, and BJ Williams, as we had mentioned, was utilised a bit more as a forward. He did float down there a fair amount, kicking 3-1 from 10 disposals, 4 marks with 3 of them inside 50, 4 inside 50s, 4 score involvements, 8 pressure acts, 3 1%, 3 spoils. And then, as we have already mentioned, debutant and former VFL Tiger Tom McCarthy was best of field for the Eagles, finishing with 31 disposals, 29 of them effective, equating to 93.5% efficiency, 9 contested possessions, 9 intercepts, 6 marks, 3 score involvements, 13 pressure acts, 8 scramble gets, and 571 meters gained. And as it was just announced, rising star Tyrell Dewar finished with 27 touches, 9 marks, 4 inside 50, 7 score involvements, 6 pressure acts, and 843 meters gained.
Yes, so obviously, as we mentioned before, although we might be thinking it would be the rise of McCarthyism like it was in the 40s, not to be, because it's too old for Rising Star.
Unfortunately.
So, I assume that just came out.
Yes.
The duo one.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, okay.
So that's why I have added it to the list, as well as the MROs. The MRO for the Port Adelaide game was also just announced, which is why I put it in the doc, and we mentioned it, and I will mention the one from this game being Harley Reid, fine true ground for striking Lockie Fogarty, and then jumping over to the injuries, because that is actually the previous dot point. Oscar Allen with a lower leg / foot kind of insert with plantaris. I don't know how that's actually pronounced, but that will do. So thankfully it's not
Plantaris.
I don't know. That's just how it was written. I don't think it's not the foot one. Like
it's the same as what Mills. Isn't it?
Might
maybe
be.
it isn't.
Anyway. Hey, it's not an ACL, not a PCL, not a patella. It's the.
No, I think it's fascia plantaris.
Yeah, that's the foot one.
I didn't actually see it. Yeah.
But so anyway, it's not the worst. So thankfully, hopefully, it won't
it's
be.
It's a pain in the ass strain, really.
For too long.
It can be bad.
Yeah,
and it can stick with you. It's hard to heal, but not debilitating.
Yeah. For the Blues, Charlie Curnow went out with calf tightness. I assume that he'll probably be okay and probably just needs to be iced and a bit of rest. But however, it does mean he could be out for at least a week, and which is not good for when you have both Curnow out and Mackay out for that forward line. So it's going to be a little concerning for them. And then Hudson O'Keefe as well went out with a hamstring concern.
Yeah, and it's just like, Carlton probably could have used this 2 weeks to try and get percentage, which is why these, foot off the games hurt. Because, as I said, coming into it, they're still the best percentage of the teams trying to come up from the bottom half of the ladder. But as I said, there's only a couple who are below 110 in the top 8, and Carlton are only equal with Fremantle in terms of that. So, it's a bit disappointing, but, next week's another opportunity. But, as I said, they better, not nest on their laurels. Otherwise, as I said, the upset could happen more than a blowout win for them. So,
I mean, it's entirely possible that they could bring back out both of the Camparellis, just because they're both fairly tall. So it would at least...
Yeah.
I mean, granted, then it's not exactly their roles. True.
Yeah.
I think one is still injured. I think it's Lucas. But they're fairly tall enough to be able to at least compensate in terms of like a fill-in sort of role. So...
I know. Ben Camparelli and Lucas both played in the VFL, so...
Oh, well, there you go. They could both come in. Who knows?
Yeah,
but that is not what we're here for now. We're here to preview the round ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So we start by going back over to the West, fun fact, for a Thursday night game between Freo and the Bombers.
Yes, Freo taking their long trip from Perth to Perth. Hopefully they won't be too tired after the journey. But a team that will be tired are the Essendon Bombers. As much as, Freo were mucking around with North, it's going to be hard. And this is what I mentioned as well, with Essendon, they really need to find something at ground level, because I imagine that Freo should have, in the back line, absolutely covered Essendon. Obviously, in the forward line, this is a game where Amos might be looking to get back into it. I don't know who they're going to get back, but as I said, it's looking a bit thin. They've confirmed a debut for Vijo Vicentini.
Vigo.
I figured out. Yeah, I figured out where I got Hugo from.
Yeah.
Is I was thinking of books and Hugo Vicentini. Sorry, Vigo would technically be Victor Hugo if it was mashed together.
Yes.
So I think that's what I was thinking of.
That might have been what you got it from.
Yeah, well, I think Dante's in fact. So I was thinking books related to that. So
that's fair enough.
Probably just very common, probably Italian names that I'm just thinking way too much about. But also friends and brothers of Ports. Friends unconfirmed, brothers confirmed of Ports.
They could be enemies for all we know.
They could be bitter rivals. I don't know. I haven't been to a but I don't think Christmas is going to come to. I can say.
No, I think they're pretty chill. But yeah, probably a convincing Fremantle win here. At least you would hope. Yeah. We just want to see.
Essendon get that forward half game going.
Yeah,
I think they're able to get a few midfield wins. I think they've got that in them. Bring the ball to ground and forward half, and at least sets you up for something. But yeah, overall, Freo from halfback should be all right.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely think that Freo should. I won't quite say dominate, but they should get a convincing win out of this game. Jumping over to Friday's matchup, we head down to Geelong, where the Cats will host the reigning premiers, the Brisbane Lions.
Yeah, well, this is a game where, as much as we talk smack about Brisbane, I would say correctly, raise and concerns. If Brisbane wins this, this is just, again, Amber Alert off, you know what I mean? But on paper, Geelong looks good, and Brisbane have a defensive injury as Geelong's forward half looks to be as strong as it has ever. Mid-season Cats are a scary prospect. I would lean towards them, but I will say they've still got to be... I'll say they need to be not accurate enough, but clean enough with ball use. Because if they get a few turnovers from the middle of the ground, probably an area where they're a bit more vulnerable, that's where Brisbane might be looking to set up. But yeah, as I said, Brisbane, they just don't look like it. You know what I mean? They can get a lot of points from turnovers, but it feels like, they're more expecting them to come from teams that are turnover heavy rather than them being a heavy intercept fishing team, I should say.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Cats will just have the upper hand for a lot of this matchup. I think the ruck battle could be very interesting. I assume it's probably going to be Stanley versus Darcy Ford, because I don't know if the Big O is going to be back just yet. He might be back this week. I think it's still very 50-50. But I think Geelong are just not just based on form, but just based on how they're able to handle the majority of the teams. I think they'll just have a very I won't say a very comfortable time. Brisbane will probably try and make it very difficult for them, but they should get a win out of this.
Yeah. I don't think there'll be too much. I think it'll be within 20 points. I'm not going to put that as my crazy prediction of the week. I'm frantically looking at the forward matchups to try and think of what is. I think last week it was at Geelong getting a 7-goal quarter, which they did. So we'll call that a win.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I said, for this game, it might be high scoring, it might not be, but as I said, the more scoring it gets, the more it favors Geelong, I think.
Yeah, 100%. All right, jumping over to our Saturday matches with Carlton hosting North Melbourne at the MCG. With Carlton's now potential issues with their forward line due to injury, could we see North possibly capitalise upon this?
I mean, it's hard to say North have to win any games because I think their season's just been a bit disappointing. They've got stuff that they need to work on. That's just guaranteed for the rest 100%. Of the year. But it would mean a lot for them to win this match. I think they've got the capabilities of it. I think it'll at least show growth. And obviously, I think the area that they can do it is, again, if their defense just holds up, they get enough shots inside 50. Gets enough entries inside 50.
Yeah.
Because, again, kind of looked okay, but I think that their tall defense is a lot better than their smalls defense. Have a lot of moving pieces in that halfback line. So, this is where a player like Paul Curtis, even a player like Zerha, that's sort of in between, might take advantage. And then on the flip side, it's just being defensively accountable enough. If you put pressure on, guys like even someone like a Fogarty, McGovern, these are players with a bit of pressure that you might expect their expected goals to lower. So, I think Carlton have to be kept under 75 points for North to win. But I think that's all very possible. And I think if they do that, they're a good chance. I might even tip them. It really depends on how the team lines up.
Yeah, depending on what the team lineup kind of looks like, I'm definitely tempted. If you're curious about the forecast at all for Saturday, top of 17 degrees, low of 9, 5% chance of rain. So it's going to be at the moment, it's forecast to be a pretty nice day. So I think
pretty nice Melbourne day.
Yeah, it's going to be cold. But I think for North, this is one of the very few times I actually get to play in the MCG. So I think they want to just try and especially take that as it comes, especially after they've just played 2 games straight over in the West.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's one of those things where, as I said, they were looked after for those 2 weeks. I think that's as well as you could do that sort of thing. So I don't think travel will be too big of an issue, but it's something to take into mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a long trip. Longest trip in football.
It really is. And,
maybe discounting Tasmania.
Well, it depends. If you go from Tasmania to, like, Cairns, then, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, jumping over to the Adelaide Oval now, where Port Adelaide will host the Swans. And Swans coming off of a bye this week. We're not entirely sure what they're going to really show. We've seen the past couple of weeks that they've kind of had fixed a little bit of their issues, but also not really at all at the same time. Obviously, the last team that they played was Richmond, and that's not really much to say. They relied a lot on their veterans to be able to win that game. So whether they have to try and do the same against Port, or if Port's just whole system is going to hold up against whatever Sydney tries to throw at them.
Yeah, well, Port looks like their last 2 weeks. Port have been much better than Sydney have in their last 2 games, but games aren't played in the last 2 games. No. I think one of the biggest things will be how Sydney rebounds, I think. Because, again, we've seen how different Port look when they minimise their back half turnovers. And I think we will see Sydney, if they can manage that a bit, they'll get a bit more score from forward half. Port just play that way. They'll always give up a few forward half turnovers. Their defensive forward half. You know what I mean? Give up goals from their back half. But yeah. So Sydney, a few more avenues to go. Again, the toll should be looked after. They've got not much ground presence, so unless you see a player that I don't think is going to come back, I don't think they get any of their smalls getting back into the side. But so as I said, it would take a few more goal kickers to rear their head up. But I would just say I'm smallly comfortably favouring Port. Not with any extreme confidence, but we are talking about 11th versus 13th, so you know what I mean?
I think it
is what it is.
I think Port is definitely, I guess with them having a bye early, they're in a much better shape because they're back to having that match fitness. They're able to carry a bit of momentum over the past 2 weeks. I think that definitely plays a lot more into their favour. So I think it'll be a really interesting matchup. All they really have to do is just shut down Sydney's veterans, honestly, because that's where Sydney generates a lot of their a lot of their momentum from. So especially if you shut down someone like the Lizard, Nick Blakey, then
I would say that's the biggest.
they shouldn't have too many issues. I would assume that if Blakey's playing in defense, he'll probably play on the
Rotating ruckman normally.
yeah, I
I
would
would think.
assume he's either going to play against like one of the ruckman. If Port play both ruckman again, he'll rotate between
Yeah,
one of them, or he'll go on someone like Georgiades for a time purely because of height. He'll kind of
maybe.
just rotate across a couple of players because that's normally what he does anyway.
Yeah, as I said, he could take even he might take a Darcy Burn Jones. You know what I mean? Like if there's no tall matchup, because Darcy's such a run with player, it will keep him involved in the game. So
Yeah, absolutely. Next on our list is over at Marvel Stadium, Collingwood's contracted one hosted Marvel game of the year because every Victorian team has to have it against St Kilda. So the Saints technically have home field advantage here,
yeah,
but based on just
Collingwood are
form,
just there so they don't get
numbers,
fined.
Collingwood should knock this out of the park.
Yeah, Saints have looked pretty trashed here over the last few weeks, and it's been a bit disappointing. But, yeah, as I said, it is a sort of game that Saints do favour, at least in terms of how Collingwood like to play. They do get a bit of the outside game going, but they, high handball team, like a little bit of pressure. Saints don't mind a contest getting turned into scrap, but again, it's just where class is different. Collingwood just have so many players this year that have, been shown to elevate movement, get more scores from both, midfield onward to out defensive half on. And yeah, so St Kilda just looked lucky to generate anything from any movement. So yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't see much of St Kilda really having too much control during this game. Some
It could
potential
be a close
upsides.
margin, but
Some potential upsides are
like
Filippo, yes, coming back. Possible debut for Alex Tour as well, which will be huge for them. But it's kind of slim pickings at the moment as to what can really happen in this kind of game.
yeah. So as I said, it's like I feel like it could be a close margin, but like one where Collingwood just have control. You know what I mean? Like maybe a 20-30. Maybe St Kilda's in it for a couple of quarters, but Collingwood just keep them at arm's length, sort of thing.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Collingwood easy win for them. I think in that regard, they shouldn't have too many issues. I don't think coming off of a bye will be much of a hindrance for them. Potential game of the round on our Sunday game though, up in Sydney at NG Stadium is the Giants hosting the Suns, the expansion club match.
I'll say this is also a very big prove yourself match as well. You know what I mean? It's like for the Giants, actually getting some back-to-back consistently. Obviously, they've looked pretty arse until that Brisbane game. And for the Suns, you know what I mean? It's like, well, if you want to make finals, as I said, you lose this, you're unfortunately edging towards where they don't want to, which is, nearer to outside the 8. Shared wins with 8, obviously not that much yet. But it will be in the back of their mind. We have seen Gold Coast fade in back half, so this could be a defining win, or loss. However, I don't know. This is hard because it's like it depends on what style. Like if GWS wants to lock it down, whether GWS likes to play a bit free flowing. I do think that this will be more likely to be a higher scoring match than a GWS down match, depending on conditions, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah. In fact, I'll make that some of the thing. What's a normal scoring shot game? I reckon there'll be 35 scoring shots.
Yeah. So
yeah, or more.
I reckon it's definitely possible. If weather conditions are good, it can very much just be like a sharpshooting match.
Yeah, exactly. So that'll be mine. I've got no idea. I didn't put much thought into that one. I'm fanning it in this week, but again, I'm sorting to Wayne. are starting to wane as well. So
It'll be interesting to
yeah,
see what goes on with the Giants in terms of their midfield because of, again, Brent Daniels going in and coming back
yeah.
out. Toby Green might still be out for this week. Obviously, they don't have Carlton Ward, which isn't helpful for them either. But with, Cadman finally hitting his stride, Jesse Hogan still having decent output. They're still looking fairly solid. Jake Riccardi has had a lot better matches over the past month or so.
Yeah.
So they're having a lot better output up forward. And, the midfield otherwise is still fairly good. And we know their defensive line is
Uh,
great.
yeah. I wouldn't say good midfield, but you know what I mean? Like, I think it's like the Brisbane match where they might lose the clearances, but they got enough outside shape not to care all that much.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm still kind of leaning towards the Suns just because I really like the look of them at the moment, even though they're coming off of a
Mm.
bye, so it's not we don't entirely know how they're going to fare. But I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in this one.
Yeah, I might edge towards the Giants personally, but again, I really can't be sure. And again, um, yeah, it's a wait and see sort of thing.
All right, jumping over to our last game for the round, the Sunday game over at Marvel Stadium between the Bulldogs and the Tigers that I'm expecting to get blitzed.
Yeah, Bulldogs against a team that's not that great defensively and struggles to score. Yeah, this is one where the Bulldogs just normally ramp at home. I'm not sure what's happened the last few times. 91, 55, and 5. That was in 2003 though, so yeah. Oh man. Where can Richmond provide some resistance? I think it is keeping the key forwards. Quite enough. Maybe limit Sam Darcy to 2 goals, Norton to 1. That might be a big win.
Mm.
I don't know. What are you looking for, Blazy?
I don't know. I'm just hoping that Meatball is all good and he actually gets to play.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, he's all good. Like nothing has really been mentioned of him getting injured during training or anything like that. So that's positive signs. I just hope that our midfield is able to perform because that's as much as I do rate our defense, it has been struggling for the past couple of weeks. But I think our midfield needs to step up a little bit more in terms of their defensive output.
Yeah.
I want to put a little
And
bit
I
of
will
note
say,
on Toronto and Hopper, whilst they are good in terms of their numbers, in other areas, their pressure has been a little bit low the past couple of weeks. So I want to see a bit of improvement on them for that part. Otherwise, it's just help a little bit more on that defensive pressure and try and generate something up forward.
yes, I will say it's funny because I have been looking up a few stats just for the other, and I always see Dion Prestia because in his 2 games, he in fact the highest average player rating, which is 21.35 from his 2 games. So yeah, he's like king of the mountain so far. Of all the players that have played games, it's
That's why I keep
Ed
saying
Richards.
that when he's fit, he's still our best midfield.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that.
He's still so good.
No, this is just saying, like, as I said, it isn't actually, it can't be overstated how much of it been, even if he isn't 833. Oh, for a midfielder.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is still important for Richmond to have him back, and hopefully he does hit the park running.
Hopefully he can hold out to end of season. That's what I'm hoping for. And then just a mention of the buys, of course, the Adelaide, Hawthorn, Melbourne, and West Coast all have the buys for this week. And that in turn brings us to the end of the episode. Sarek has mentioned in the past that he has done a mid-season All-Australian. We will cover that next week because we will have more time next week, hopefully. So we will do that
and
then.
I might not be dead.
Well, we want to hope that that's not the case.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. That'll be a reward for living through the week.
Fingers are definitely crossed.
You get the Australian, yeah.
But until then, thank you all so much for coming to hang out, coming to chat, coming to chill, coming to watch, coming to listen, coming to like and subscribe. We're looking forward to this week ahead. I don't have too much planned for this week in terms of like productions and stuff. I think this week is a quiet week. I assume you're much the same of not being too busy this week.
Trying to recover.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I might make an appearance at that Sunday game, even though we're going to get absolutely pumped, just because I want to go to the footy. So we'll see about that. But until then, thank you all so much once again. Be sure to go check out socials, of course, for anything we get up to. If there is something on in terms of like production and stuff, that'll be all on my socials for you to go check out. Otherwise, there'll be streams as per normal, things like that. But yes, thank you all so much, and we'll see you all next week for episode 64 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast. So until then, catch you later.